And I have three main reasons for why race matters in fantasy adaptations. You might say, hey, no, it really doesn't. You're just being racist. No, that's just silly. There's three big reasons why race actually does matter in fantasy. First off, back in the day, people used to not travel so much. Think about this, okay? So basically, there wouldn't be a town, a small podunk town, with black and white and Hispanic people. That makes sense, doesn't it? It would be a town of black people, a town of white people. This might not seem like that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. It's very atmospheric if you stick with the historical details. Like, you can't just go, oh, well, we want to make it reflect the world that we live in today, so we're just going to make this village not make any sense. Look, it's a small town, broken off from the world. What are you talking about? Like, let's look at a good movie adaptation, right? So you've got, like, Lord of the Rings is a great example. Do I like everything they did on Lord of the Rings? No, I don't like everything they did. Did I enjoy it as an adaptation? Yes. Did they do a great job? Yes. Did they obviously respect Tolkien? Yes. You get to the Shire, right? And there's just a bunch of hobbits there. There aren't elves there. There aren't people. It's just hobbits. They're country folk who stick to themselves. That made sense. You didn't have to throw in, different kinds of people and different kinds of creatures. Historically speaking, people who live in certain areas look a certain way, right? Hispanic people, like from South America, for instance, have darker hair. Good examples like that. Skin color from different places in the world. Things that, once again, might not seem like a big deal, but it actually kind of is, and it sets up the historical atmosphere, okay? And so if you're trying to say, hey, here's a podunk town, but it's got white people and Asian people and black people and all... What? Like, it's not a small podunk town then. It's obviously a center of trade and commerce. You can tell from the people who live there. I mean, doesn't that make sense? So that's the first reason why, is for historical accuracy. The second reason why race really does matter in fantasy adaptations. Some races are specifically certain colors. You take, for instance, in the Middle Earth, in Tolkien's world, the elves were very fair of skin. Oh, well, that's white supremacist. No, it's not white. No, that's not white supremacist at all. That's saying that these certain race, which is imaginary, by the way, has a certain skin color. That's fine. Is it racist to say that the predator's skin is the color that it is? Is it racist to say that the alien is black? I mean, this just seems a little bit over the top. Anyways, so some races are specifically certain colors, and it breaks the fantasy element to try and change that. And for no reason. For no reason. The third reason why race matters in fantasy adaptations is because fantasy isn't supposed to mirror the world we live in today. That is the foundational element of fantasy, is that it's not the world we live in today. If it was the world we live in today, it would be a historical fiction, or it would be a history book. Fantasy is not supposed to mirror the world we live in today. That's not that complicated of an idea. I watch Lord of the Rings because it's not CNN. I watch The Hobbit because it's not Fox News. I watch fantasy and I read fantasy because it's fantasy. It's fun. It takes you somewhere else. This is what it's supposed to do. Imagine how sucky the book The Hobbit would be today if it had an agenda. Instead, it's just fun fantasy. It took me away from problems. It helped me to use my imagination as a kid. It gave me a lifelong wonder of things like dragons and adventure and treasure. I mean, it stuck with me through the years. It gave me something that these modern movies can't give me because they're too busy trying to give their whatever it is that they're trying to get across. Fantasy isn't supposed to be everything we should be today. We're social justice. It's not supposed to be that. There's supposed to be things like people getting mistreated and stuff. It's not. There is no story without conflict. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what makes fantasy great. Our heroes aren't supposed to be one-dimensional. You know what I mean? Like, you take Frodo, for instance, who is struggling to do this thing, but he's sticking with it, and he even starts forgetting why he's even doing it. And then at the end, he just wants to give up and go home or take the ring for himself or whatever. And this is the hero. This is the guy. Oh, and he's still unable to go there with a steadfast heart the whole time. That's people with problems. People with problems are real. Aragorn's we're not talking about Lord of the Rings. We're talking about why race matters in fantasy adaptations. So I'll just kind of stop there. So it's not supposed to be everything that we should be today. It's fantasy, and you know what? That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Fantasy should, in large part, show us what we can't be and what we won't be, and not just in a good sense, but also in a bad sense. Let me kind of break this down, okay? A world with elves. That's something we can do, right? A world where wizards are killing everybody. People are mass dying because of wizards. That's a bad thing, but it's a fantasy, right? So it's okay in fantasy if things happen that is not okay in the real world. It's really not okay for wizards to come and kill us all. But I think that we're mature and old enough to understand, yes, hypothetically, if there were wizards, it would be bad for them to come and kill us all. I think that we don't really need the whole lesson thing going on. And so then what people try and do is they try to make it gender inclusive too, or whatever you want to call it, by swapping out people. Like, oh, this is the main character. He's a guy. Oh, that's not good enough. Let's change it to a girl. All that you've done is you've given an excuse for your poor character development and writing. See, I can't write a good female character, so instead I'm going to make this male character who's super good and super deep into a female character. I don't have to be a good writer to do that. Come on. Anyways, those are my 3 reasons why race, I think, really matters in fantasy adaptations. And I think that it doesn't make you racist. It makes you a lover of fantasy. I'm a nerd. Like, that's totally fine. But at least I wouldn't have done what they did to Henry Cavill or The Witcher. Just saying.